This lesson is on adding rows to a table. Now, we're going to use a form here to enter a new author in the authors table. You can see that we have 23 authors here currently, and we're going to try to add to that. Let's move back up. So the social security number is a primary key of the author table, so we need to enter it. A totally made-up number. Let's enter my name. And now I'm going to click the Add Author button. Click. So it says Author Added, Perry Steve. Look what I did here. I made this red here. I actually refreshed the table. When I clicked this button, we went back to the server, ran the same program, collected the form information, added it to the table, and then reselected from the table and displayed all the authors. Just for a visual cue, I decided to make the social security number appear as red so we could easily spot it. Let's try one more just for fun. Jane Jones. Add the author. Added Jane Jones, and now we see the number up here and Jane Jones, and now we have 25 authors in the author table. Let's look at the code. Okay, we're at the top here. Let's move down. You can see I'm using styles, and I put the styles this time just in the style section of the page, just to make it a little easier for us to see here in one file. Normally, of course, we keep things linked out to a .css file. So we got a form. This form's action tag calls itself, so we're always running this program recursively. Now you can see we have the Add Author ID. And that's where we saw the headings, enter social security number, last name, first name, and the submit button. Okay, so that's where that is. And I named these things my. I put my in front of it. I wanted to keep it clear that this is something that I entered and it wasn't something coming from the database or elsewhere. So my first name, my last name. Here is the connection to the database, just like we've been doing. The MySQL Connect, selecting the particular database. So one of the first things I do is I get this data from the form, the three fields, my last name and my first name. I check to see if they're there. The first time we run this program, they won't be there. They will not be set. So this will fail, and I'll default them to be an empty string. There's nothing between the two ticks there. So it'll just be empty, and that's what we saw. After that, if the user entered anything, we will see that information in this variable. In fact, I trim it. If someone enters an extra space before or afterwards, I go ahead and I get rid of that. Right as I'm getting the data, I trim it and put it in this variable. Down here, after I check them all, I'm now going to make sure that they're all filled in. So what I'm asking here is, did they enter something, or is the social security number blank? Or is the last name blank? Or is the first name blank? If any of those are true, I'm setting a return code just to be empty. And I don't run the function that inserts an author. I don't want to insert a blank author. Of course, the database won't let me because all of those fields are required with a not null constraint. But why even go there? I can check ahead of time, validate the data, make sure that it's not empty. So let's assume they filled it out, just as you saw me do. Then we're going to fall through and run this insert author function. Now, one of the things I pass to it is the database connection string, the $db. I'm going to pass that as a parameter, and then the three pieces of information. So let's go all the way down. I wrote that down at the bottom of the program. I have a function area after the ending HTML. So here it is. And I just gave them the same names that they had coming in. Nothing wrong with that. So here I'm building a statement. I just called it $statement. Insert into author the three columns that I want to fill in. I give it the values. And now look at this. This is what really confuses people. This concatenated string. What I'm doing, let's break this up. I'm passing a single tick as the first part of the string. Then I concatenate that with the actual social security number. Then I concatenate that with the closing single tick here, a comma, a space, and then the beginning single tick for the next field, which is the last name. So that's another string concatenated with my last name. I do that again. I concatenate that here, the ending tick, the comma, the space, the beginning single tick to put the first name in here. I'm concatenating. But at the end of this, of course, I only need a single tick. I don't need an additional comma. In fact, that would be an error. And then I put the ending parentheses there. Now, interestingly, even though I'm doing an insert statement and not a select statement, you still run the MySQL query function. Seems to be kind of a misnomer, but that's the way it is. So you pass the statement to it, and you receive a result. But the result from an insert statement is different. It doesn't hold a grid full of data. It can hold other information. Well, basically, we can determine whether or not we have an error. So I did this a little bit different. I basically said if $result, basically, if it ran okay, is it true? Then I echoed out that statement, authors added, and I repeated the author name that we did add successfully. And I returned the social security number back to the call of this. We'll go look at that in a minute. If it's not okay, if the result didn't run okay, then I go ahead and I do the normal error thing. But there's a twist when we're inserting data. You have to look specifically at error 1062. And what that says is the author is already in the table. And I tell them which author we're trying to insert. Now, that isn't always an error. It's an error to SQL because it's not going to allow us to insert another author, a duplicate with that social security number. We have to make sure that. So it is an error from a SQL standpoint. From our standpoint, we might not care. And so we might want to handle it over and over. You may have a collection of data where there might be duplicate authors coming in. The data is just in 2 or more places. And you may be able to essentially just blow it off and not even worry about it. Just as long as the author gets put in there once, that's fine. So if it's not a special 1062 error, then we just give the normal error messages and return not added. So let's go to the top part of the program where we started this. Here it is. So now we have return code. It's either not added or it has the social security number in it, one or the other. We fall through to the select statement, right? Pretty straightforward. I'm selecting all the authors. I'm not even passing any information to the select statements. So we run it with the MySQL query, get the result, the normal routine, error message. Come down here, we're building a table just like we have in the past. We use the for loop, alternating colors on the rows. Life is good. We fetch the result. This time we're displaying the social security number, last name, and first name. We're not displaying the state code like we did in previous examples. Now, look at this, though. If the return code, remember we returned the social security number, equals the social security number that came back from the database, go ahead and make it red. Remember how I said I made it red? Kind of highlight it in the table, make it easy to stand out. So I made the color of the text red, not the background color, but the text color red on that particular social security number. And then we got out of there, did the table, and it's just what we've seen over and over again. We close out the table, print it out, and life is good. That ends our lesson on inserting data into a table using MySQL in PHP.